Hi everyone, thanks for watching my webinar on peri and postmenopause. Now the menopausal era is a big topic and it can be a very challenging time. Now I could talk about menopause all day, so in our time together I plan to cover the most relevant information on this subject and practical advice which can make big changes. Firstly, let's start with some good news. Perimenopause and postmenopause are not diseases. They're just natural stages of life. And it can actually be very empowering, believe it or not, if we manage our symptoms, try to improve our health, and reach out for help. Actually, through many cultures around the world, menopause is valued as a time for greater freedom, wisdom, and respect. And I think our culture may be catching up. For previous generations, there may have been stigma, shame, and a feeling of a loss of youth, but I feel so lucky to belong to a generation of women who are really open about health and more than happy to talk about menopause. So today we'll talk about the basics of the menopausal era, evidence-informed dietary approaches which reduce symptoms, which behaviours and conditions are best avoided, a deeper dive into brain fog, what pathology testing may be worth considering, how the gut microbiome and the menopausal era are connected, protecting your health and bones through the menopausal era, herbal medicine and nutritional support, the upside of menopause, and why work with a naturopath. My goal is for you to leave today feeling informed, reassured that you're not imagining things, but also empowered to make changes that can really enhance your journey in this life. Now let's just touch on the stages of the menopausal era and related symptoms so we're on the same page. We're officially in menopause when a woman has gone 12 consecutive months without a menstrual period. Everything after that point is considered postmenopause. Perimenopause is the transition leading up to menopause and can last anywhere from 1 to 10 years or beyond. The average age of menopause in Australia is 51, although is commonly a few years before or after this point. Many symptoms can be similar in peri and postmenopause, so I will commonly refer to this whole stage as the menopausal era. During this time, hormones can fluctuate significantly, particularly estrogen and progesterone. These hormonal fluctuations can lead to symptoms which you may already be familiar with, such as irregular periods, hot flushes and night sweats, sleep disturbances, mood changes, including depression and anxiety. The list isn't good. Brain fog, reducing concentration and memory, crashing fatigue, weight gain, especially around the abdomen, joint aches, muscle aches, and frozen shoulder, reduced libido, and vaginal dryness. Now, these are the symptoms, and a lot of us have lived these experiences, so this is not a surprise. But the question is, what can we do about this? Now, some great news is something as simple as changing our dietary approach can really change how we experience peri and postmenopause. Now, the strong evidence is showing a Mediterranean diet or other whole food, plant forward dietary approaches can really reduce our symptoms, including hot flushes. Now, why is this? It's most likely due to four main factors. Plant-rich diets are naturally high in fiber, which is a great source of food for our gut bacteria. One of the functions of the gut is to balance estrogen reabsorption. With the right balance of well-fed gut bacteria, estrogen can be reabsorbed at a healthy level, making this estrogen more available to our bodies and reducing peri and postmenopausal symptoms. We'll chat more about gut bacteria later on. Two, plant foods contain natural sources of plant estrogens. These estrogens are not the same as human estrogens, and they're not going to increase excessive estrogen levels in our body. They just gently soothe estrogen receptors and help reduce low estrogen peri and postmenopausal symptoms. Now, plant foods are high in antioxidants and are anti-inflammatory, therefore reduce inflammation in the brain, which we call neuroinflammation, reducing brain fog and increasing concentration and memory. This also reduces systemic or whole body inflammation, assisting in reducing pain and inflammation in joints and muscles. Now, also increasing plant foods increases micronutrients such as vitamin K, magnesium, and potassium, which are incredibly important for bone health and heart health. Now, I'd like to share a recipe I've created with you. If you'd like to go to my website and go to stories, you'll find the full recipe there. This is a great way to start a very strong Mediterranean or plant-forward approach to your day. This particular breakfast recipe is very high in omega-3, high in iron, high in micronutrients, really high in protein. In fact, has more protein than the average eggs on toast, and it also is really, really high in fiber. So check this recipe out and give it a go. You can even let me know what you think. So we also know some lifestyle and exercise behaviours can reduce menopausal symptoms. So these are increasing strength training and including mild to moderate exercise such as Pilates, walking, yoga, and swimming can all be really helpful, but also reducing our load of high intensity exercise can be helpful. So we just don't want to lean into that all the time. We can include that in our lives, but just it can't be our main form of exercise, as too much high intensity training can increase cortisol, which over time can have a negative effect on estrogen, hot flushes, sleep, bone health, weight, and cognition. And I've included links to this idea at the end. We also know that certain lifestyle behaviours such as smoking, regularly drinking alcohol, being overweight, and high levels of stress can increase our menopausal symptoms. So these are choices, behaviours, and conditions which we try to avoid or modify in order to reduce the likelihood of symptoms. But if you fall into one of these boxes, you will know that it is easier said than done, and you'll most likely benefit from reaching out for help. For me, the most severe symptoms I experienced were crashing fatigue, brain fog, and hot flushes. And initially, just changing my diet and increasing soy was enough to get on top of my symptoms. But as time went by and my hormones start changing, I did then need to lean into herbal medicine, which helped actually eliminate my symptoms. And then eventually, I also had to actively work on reducing stress to reduce my symptoms as well. Now, my story will not be the same as your story. Every human is different. And within my practice, I've never given the same herbal prescription diet and nutritional support to two different patients. Everyone's individual and everyone will have an individual prescription. If you're not ready for naturopathic support yet, yes, please lean into the lifestyle and nutrition advice. For some people, this will be enough. And for some people, they'll actually need a little bit more, and it will help to reach out for some extra support. Now, brain fog is probably one of the most common concerns I hear from women, and some are worried it could be dementia. Now, the good news is it is most likely not dementia. Brain fog is so common. Your clarity of thought will come back as your brain adjusts to the new hormonal levels. In our reproductive years, estrogen actually lights up the brain like an amusement park. It is vital through these years to get energy into the cell in the brain. Thankfully, our brains are very neuroplastic, meaning they can adapt. And as time goes by, the brain finds other pathways to bring energy into the cell. The estrogen plays a role in memory, concentration, learning, mood regulation, dopamine production, and neuroprotection. It really helps our brain during those reproductive years. And for women with ADHD, during perimenopause and postmenopause, symptoms can become significantly more noticeable because dopamine regulation is closely linked with estrogen. Research has also shown that depression becomes significantly more common during perimenopause, particularly in women with a history of premenstrual mood changes or postnatal depression. There are several things we know that support cognitive health during the menopausal era. The same diet and lifestyle advice that we've already discussed, plus quality sleep. If you have adopted the diet and lifestyle advice and are having problems with this, naturopathic care could actually be very helpful. Adequate omega-3 intake dietary is best. The studies definitely show dietary forms of omega-3 work better than supplementation. Social connection, very important. Learning new skills. You can even lean into things like herbal medicine, and a great way to start is just including rosemary tea. Now, you can also look at circulation stimulants and cognition enhancing herbal medicine. For this, you do require consultation due to the need to check what is most appropriate. You don't want to waste time and money on something that isn't specific for you. We also need to check health condition cautions and medication interactions and contraindications as well. Regularly checking pathology for healthy vitamin D, iron, and B12 levels, and treating these as appropriate, as all of these can actually affect your cognition. Now, talking about pathology, what other markers can be helpful during this era? We can look at our hormonal markers, estradiol, FSH, LH, although sometimes we can go on a day that maybe our hormones are on their way up or down and it won't show the full picture. So in that case, symptoms might be more telling. We can also look at thyroid functions such as TSH, free T4, free T3. Sometimes a thyroid issue can be very similar to peri and postmenopausal symptoms, so it can be a really good one to check. General health markers such as full blood count, iron studies, vitamin B12, vitamin D, liver function tests, fasting glucose and HbA1c, blood lipids, and kidney function tests. Now, sometimes what appears to be a menopausal issue may actually be low iron, low vitamin B12, thyroid dysfunction, vitamin D deficiency, or metabolic changes. If you've got a good relationship with your GP, you may like to request this group of tests, but remember to mention what symptoms you're experiencing, as they can only order tests that are clinically relevant. Remember to ask your GP for a copy of your records. This will also be important information to bring to any naturopathic consultation. As a naturopath, I can also organise these pathology tests as part of an initial consultation and help interpret them with you in the context of your overall health. Another area that is receiving a lot of attention in research is the connection between menopause and the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome plays an important role in inflammation, metabolic health, brain health, and mood and hormone regulation. There's even a group of bacteria known as the estrobolome that help metabolize and recycle estrogen within the body. As estrogen levels decline during peri and postmenopause, changes can occur within the microbiome itself. Research suggests that diversity in the gut microbiome may reduce after menopause, and beneficial bacteria can become less abundant. The good news is that we can influence these microbes through our dietary choices. Rather than focusing solely on probiotics, I encourage women to focus on feeding the beneficial bacteria that already lives in their gut. Fiber is what feeds beneficial bacteria and is in all plant foods. Generally, a healthy gut microbiome might have around 200 or so different species of bacteria, which is a huge variety. In fact, we have around 30 trillion or so total bacteria in our bodies, which is actually more than we have cells in our bodies. And as a different bacteria prefer different fibers, a wide variety of changing foods is optimal to feed all those different varieties of species. Now, if we have had a low fiber diet and we're wanting to build up fiber, it is really important to do that slowly, as we kind of breed up those different species of bacteria with this new fiber food. If we go too fast too soon, it can lead to gas and bloating and sometimes even cramping. Because we've kind of increased it too quick and the bacteria aren't ready to process that fiber yet. So low and slow is the way to go. There's a whole range of foods that are really helpful at building up this bacteria. We can look at oats, barley, legumes, chickpeas, lentils, apples, pears, green bananas, pomegranate, cranberries, berries, resistant starch foods such as cooked and cooled potatoes or cooked and cooled rice, fermented foods such as sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, unsweetened yogurt, and fermented vegetables. These ones are all really, really great, but it's a very specific list. In fact, we don't really need to stick to that exact list. We just really want to increase our overall variety of plants. In fact, research suggests that people who consume around 30 different plants each week tend to have a more diverse and robust microbiome than those eating a more limited range of food. The more diverse and abundant our healthy gut bacteria, the more resilient our gut health becomes, and the greater benefits to our whole body cells, tissues, organs, and systems. This doesn't mean just 30 different vegetables. It can include herbs, spices, nuts, seeds, legumes, mushrooms, sea vegetables, sprouts, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. Um, Initially, it can be a really good idea to keep a notepad in the kitchen and just write down each different plant that you've been eating that week. Or if you're a phone user, you can start writing it down in notes in your phone. A healthy gut microbiome may not completely eliminate menopausal symptoms for every person, but it will help support metabolic health, digestive health, mental health, immune function, healthy cholesterol levels, and overall well-being throughout the whole menopausal era. To find out more about my patient's gut microbiome, when indicated, I sometimes refer to Microba for microbiome testing, and this allows more specific treatment to improve gut health when needed. Now, this test analyzes the bacteria living within the gut and can help identify whether beneficial microbes may be present in lower than desirable levels and how to change this. So, what probiotics or prebiotic fibers might be needed to increase these levels. I can also then tell if there's any inflammatory markers. We can look at if there's any parasites. We can look at whether certain foods are getting digested properly. It can be a really good tool. Now, it's not for everybody as it does cost money, so we can normally get there without that. It's just a little bit more tailored and quite specific and quite informative if we can lean into that test. But however, the goal isn't simply surviving menopause. It's using this stage as an opportunity to lean into learning more about your body, your health, and setting up long-term strength and resilience. Two areas that deserve far more attention in menopause conversations are cardiovascular health and bone health. These aren't separate issues to your hormones, your gut, or your brain. They're deeply connected to the same hormonal shifts we've already been discussing. Cardiovascular health. So as we move towards and beyond menopause, heart health and blood vessel health becomes an important focus. If we're lucky, we will get to experience perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause and old age. So hopefully this is an era that's going to happen for most of us. As the number of women suffering from cardiovascular disease dramatically increases at this stage, heart disease and dementia, followed by stroke, are the leading causes of death in women. So I've talked about how lucky we are, but we also need to look after our health during this area. The risk significantly rises after menopause as the protective effects of estrogen decline. Although preventative healthcare is very effective at reducing heart events, the two main markers I encourage women to become familiar with are cholesterol, particularly LDL cholesterol, and blood pressure, as these two markers are normally well managed with diet, exercise, and stress reduction, unless there is a strong genetic link. Additionally, GPs can also order a coronary artery calcium score, which can be a really helpful if cardiovascular disease is a concern. Estrogen has a protective effect on our blood vessels. It helps keep the lining of our arteries to stay flexible and helps produce nitric oxide, which allows blood vessels to relax and widen if needed. As estrogen declines through menopause and postmenopause, this protection reduces and arteries can become stiffer and more quickly than they did before. What's interesting is that women who tend to fare best through this transition are often the ones who enter menopause with blood pressure already sitting at the lower end of the healthy range. Some of the same strategies that support our gut and brain also support our heart. So regular movement, especially activities that raise our heart rate, omega-3 rich foods, magnesium rich foods such as leafy greens, nuts and seeds, reducing highly processed foods, not smoking, and moderating or eliminating alcohol. So bone health. Estrogen also plays an important role in maintaining bone density. So bone loss accelerates as we move through menopause and into the years following menopause. This is the most rapid in the first few years after your final period. This doesn't mean bone loss is inevitable or out of your control. There's a great deal we can do. The single most powerful tool we have is weight-bearing exercise. So this includes strength training. Bone is a living tissue and it responds to load. When we ask it to do work, it adapts and becomes stronger. The nutrients that matter the most for bone health are calcium, ideally from the diet, vitamin D, which helps absorb calcium, vitamin D, ideally from the sun in healthy levels, vitamin K2, which helps direct calcium where we want it into the bone rather into the soft tissues in our arteries. My preference is to always work on getting these nutrients through the food first, just as importantly, making sure our body is actually digesting and absorbing them well. There's little point in increasing calcium if poor gut function is limiting how much you can actually absorb, which is an important reason that gut health and bone health are connected. Now, I've also included a natto rice bowl recipe for you. So once again, navigate to my website, go to stories, you'll find the full recipe there. The reason why I've included this is natto is the highest source of K2, and K2 is so fantastic for our bone health and our cardiovascular health. And researchers actually found that a particular group of women in Japan who had a lot of natto in their diet had extremely good bone health. So they looked at what they were eating and they found that it was the K2 in the natto. Now, natto isn't for everybody. Not everyone's going to enjoy natto. It's fermented soybeans and it has quite a stringy, sometimes maybe slimy consistency. I love it. I eat it every day, but I'll warn you, yes, do give this recipe a try, but it might not be for everyone. The reason why I have included it though is because it is just so good for your cardiovascular health and bone health. So if you can do it, it's such a good thing to lean into. A lot of Japanese women have this for breakfast every day. Now, I thought I might talk to you about herbal medicine and peri and postmenopause. I find herbal medicine extremely effective in this area. Two herbs that I might talk to you about are black cohosh and red clover, although the raft of herbs that we can use is extensive. In fact, I'm surprised it's not the first thing that we look at for peri and postmenopause, as I find it just shows such good results. Okay, so two of them that I do frequently lean into are black cohosh, which is particularly good for perimenopause. With black cohosh, it helps reduce hot flushes, headaches, palpitations, anxiety, insomnia, irritability, depression, painful periods, joint pain such as arthritis. How? It's a strong anti-inflammatory. It works on the central nervous system to balance temperature, and current research suggests that this herb binds to serotonin receptors, balancing mood. Best avoided in pregnancy and lactation and in people on hormone replacement therapy, antidepressants, and people who have pre-existing liver disease. As with all medicines, discontinue use immediately in adverse effects. If you are on any medication already or have any chronic health conditions, please check your GP or naturopath before taking. In fact, I'd always suggest talking to a healthcare professional before taking any herbal medicine or nutritional supplements. Red clover really shines in post-menopause. This herb is rich in phytoestrogens, so great for reducing low estrogen symptoms, but it's also helpful in reducing cholesterol, balancing blood pressure, and studies have found it to be helpful in maintaining bone health. It should also be avoided in those taking pharmaceutical medications unless approved by your GP or naturopath. If you're wanting to find some of these herbal medicines on your own, I strongly advise do not lean into finding them online, especially overseas websites. If it comes from overseas, there's no guarantee what's inside that particular bottle. It's quite common for these to not actually contain what the ingredients say on the outside and have there's many reports of adulteration, having stimulants or sedatives that are synthetic that mimic the particular herb but aren't that herb, and there can actually be low quality toxins that are included as well. If you get something that's manufactured within Australia and has a TGA approval on there, so an AUST-L number, AUST-L, that means the TGA, a governing body in Australia, has had a look at that and have verified that the ingredients are in there and that they're safe and of good quality. That being said, once again, I would always lean into talking to a GP or a naturopath, or whatever healthcare professional you're seeing, to make sure that it's going to be safe and effective for you. Now, I also wanted to let you know that if you skip to the list of studies on the final slide, I've included some current studies which support the therapeutic benefits and safety of herbal medicine compared to pharmaceutical interventions. These studies show less adverse effects less adverse effects for herbal and nutritional medicine compared to pharmaceutical interventions, although often comparable results, so quite good results. I haven't mentioned nutritional supplements for a reason. Nutritional supplements only work if there's a deficiency, and reports of above range or toxic levels of nutrients are becoming more common. And I've even seen this in my clinic more frequently with long-term supplementation of iron, zinc, and without regular blood tests. This is one of the reasons why I organise pathology testing in an initial consultation. So I should say the people who have showed up in my clinic with above range aren't from my prescription. They've come in already taking these medications. Now, we've talked about the challenges of peri and postmenopause, but I'd also like to finish by talking about something we don't hear enough about, the potential benefits. For many women, menopause isn't simply a time of loss. It can also become a period of growth, confidence, and renewed purpose. Researchers have even observed what is known as the U-shaped curve of happiness. Across many countries, studies have found that life satisfaction tends to follow a predictable pattern. Happiness is often relatively high in young adulthood, gradually declining through the 30s and 40s, unfortunately, and reaches its lower point around the late 40s and early 50s commonly, then begins to rise again. So one of the largest analyses involving more than 500,000 people across the United States and Europe found this same U-curve shaped pattern repeatedly. Although the exact age differs slightly between studies and countries, many people report greater emotional well-being, improved life satisfaction, and increased happiness during their mid to late 50s, 60s, and beyond. And why does this happen? Part of it's biological, as hormones eventually stabilize after the transition through menopause, but much of it appears to be psychological and social. But I should also mention that estrogen is our people-pleasing hormone. So as this declines, yes, we can feel strange and uncomfortable as our levels try to adjust, but eventually we kind of come out of that thinking, all right, do I need to do all this people-pleasing, or can I start thinking about what's important to me as well? So many women describe caring less about other people's expectations, becoming more comfortable with saying no, having greater confidence in who they are, worrying less about perfection, having more time for themselves as children become more independent, focusing on relationships and activities that truly matter to them. There's even research that are showing that older adults often become better at regulating emotion, placing less emphasis on negative experiences and more on positive ones. In many ways, wisdom seems to bring greater emotional resilience. One of my favourite descriptions of this stage of life comes from anthropologist Margaret Mead, who famously said, "There is no greater power in the world than the zest of a menopausal woman." Whether or not every woman experiences menopause, peri, and post this way, I think is a wonderful reminder that this stage of life doesn't have to be viewed as the beginning of decline. It can be the beginning of a new chapter, one with greater confidence, clearer priorities, deeper self-understanding, and the freedom to invest in things that matter the most. And if you're struggling right now, it is important to remember that the symptoms of menopause are temporary. They don't define the rest of your life. With the right support, many women come through this transition feeling healthier, stronger, and like themselves again. So why work with a naturopath? Naturopaths are trained to consider how different body symptoms may be interacting. Hormones, gut health, nutrition, sleep, stress, metabolic health, inflammation, lifestyle factors, and more can all influence how a woman experiences menopause and postmenopause. If you see a naturopath, we will try to formulate a plan to improve your health naturally. And my goal is to understand what may be contributing to those symptoms and then work with the body using evidence-informed nutrition, lifestyle strategies, pathology testing, and natural medicines where appropriate to help restore balance and improve overall well-being. I'm looking to improve your health now, but also into the future. As we age past menopause, if we're lucky, we may get the chance to be elderly. When I think about my own distant future, I would love to be an old woman with supportive bones, a strong heart, and a sharp mind. So I'm free to have fun, be kind, creative, and a caring family member friend, and contribute to my community. It can be a really great idea to consider what goals are important for you in your future, as the changes you make now can go a long way to manifesting your future self. Now, making naturopathic care more accessible. So, educational group consultations are something that I can offer. This is a way to make naturopathic care more accessible for some people, as it does bring the price down. Now, it's important to understand that group consultations are not intended to replace comprehensive one-on-one naturopathic care. They're more of an education piece. They're and a way to build a supportive community. They're not a deep dive into an individual's health history, and still some people might prefer or benefit from one-on-one individual consultations. But please reach out to me. There's an online form if you would like to look at group consultations. They are quite nice. Now, I just want to retouch on the key elements to take away from reducing symptoms and improving long-term health, and leaning into a plant-rich whole foods diet, strength training, moderate exercise, stress reduction, social connection, and quality sleep. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today, it's this. Menopause is not the beginning of the end. It is the beginning of a new and important life stage. Your body is not broken. It's busy trying to adapt. And with the right support, information, and strategy, you can absolutely thrive through this transition. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. For more information, please follow me on social media, visit my website, or send me an email. I really appreciate you listening to my webinar, and I hope that you got something helpful that you can include in your everyday life. Thank you.